Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Live here. Now, I have a small confession to make. Yes, I own a Nintendo Switch 2, but I don't own a 120Hz screen. Or at least I didn't. Now I have, well, technically two. These are the Viture Luma Pro XR glasses. And if you haven't worked out, well, I mean, I basically already said it. It's a funny screen in glasses, isn't it? Well, no, that's not true. As I said, it's two, because obviously you need one for each eye. Yes, these are two 120Hz displays in a pair of glasses. And I mean, from the front, maybe you'd sort of think, whoa, those are somewhat normal-looking sunglasses. You catch a glimpse from the side, and the illusion is somewhat shattered. They're fairly chunky. What's more important, though, is that using this sort of power bank-looking thing, these glasses are Switch 2 compatible. The manufacturer sent these over, thank you very much for that, but they have had no editorial control in this video whatsoever. They're gonna see it the same time as you. I've been using these for about a week now or so, give or take, on and off now and then. I've not exactly been slapping them on every single day, but you know, I've given them a good shake, and I want to tell you all about them. The good and the bad. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Right, first things first, I'm taking those off because it feels a little impersonal to have sunglasses on when you're, well, sort of talking to someone. Let me just start off by saying that these things are an absolute flipping nuisance to film, but I've got some reasonable footage. However, don't look at the footage and think that's exactly what your eyes are gonna see, because it's all to do with optics and stuff like that. There's a weird thing, like, I can't just like zoom in, I've got to get right up close with the camera lens, and even then you've got like different fields of view. You know, it's complicated. Basically, I'll have an example later on that's kind of mocked up for you to enjoy. But when you are wearing these and using your eyes and not a camera, what you have is two micro OLED displays that are, I don't know, maybe like 2 centimeters across. These displays are not technically 1080p, they are 1200p. Basically, there's like 60 extra pixels at the top, 60 extra at the bottom. It's the same width though, it's still 1920. And I've used these sort of things before. I've also used like VR goggles. I've even looked at some of Viture's stuff in the past on the channel, and you know, I kind of liked them, you know. They weren't perfect, but I could see what they were going for. This time around, it's a huge upgrade. Before, it was really kind of tricky to get things like properly sharp and properly in focus. I don't know what they've done with the optics or maybe with the new displays. I mean, they are OLED, but now it is pin sharp. It is pin sharp in the center. Like, I would say a vast majority, like a good, you know, sort of 75-80% of the field of view is absolutely crystal clear pin sharp, provided you get the focus stuff done right. And it's per eye. You'll need to do a bit of fiddling, but when you get it right, you'll know. If you get it wrong, one eye will be uncomfortable. You'll work it out. Unfortunately, the corners are still a little bit blurry and a little bit aberrated. That's where the color kind of splits apart, as it were. I'm oversimplifying, but if just Google chromatic aberration, a lot of people use it in films now. Basically, that in the corners. You know what? I'm feeling generous. Here's that mock-up I mentioned. It looks a little bit like this. Again, I can't reasonably show you an accurate representation, but this is as close as I can get to what my eyes see, and everyone's eyes are going to be different. They do offer like prescription like fills, like lenses that go in front, like on the user side, because that's the important side, and so that will make a big difference as well. But, well, let's just say that if you wear glasses all the time, you're gonna need either that or some contacts in order to use these. The whole blurriness and aberration is mostly obvious on things with like really small and fine detail. I plugged these into a Windows computer just to see that, and it was pretty excessive in those instances, or at least excessively noticeable. However, playing Switch 2, because things are a bit chunkier, a bit more colorful, not quite as contrasty with, like, you know, black text on a white background, it's far less noticeable. You are, however, going to have to do a little bit of work in order to be able to see everything. There's a strange effect with this. I think I maybe mentioned it earlier when it comes to filming. You have to be right up close. If you move the screens away, they remain the same size. Presumably some sort of optics thing, but, you know, sort of, it's not like you can have them further away and the screen will be smaller. It just doesn't work like that. So you're gonna have to do a bit of sort of micro adjustment in order to make sure that you get everything fully in view. However, compared to previous examples that I've used, there is one thing that makes a big difference, and it's not just these little nose rests. What are they called? They're not nose clips. The glasses come with various different sizes, which will raise it up or lower it down on the front of your face, depending on whether you're going for a longer set or a shorter set. Makes sense. But the difference is, even though they're very slight realistically, it's so up close that even a tiny adjustment can make a big difference. And thankfully, they've thought about that as well, because not only do you have those little nose grip things, but also... Did you hear that? Oh! The arms of the glasses also have these little adjustments to them, and it's not... they're not major. Go on, getting them out of whack. But this little bit of adjustment here on each arm, combined with the nose grips, means that you can genuinely get, I would say, nearly 100% of the screen in view. I say screen, it's two screens, but you know what I mean. If you get it wrong, though, you are going to end up losing a little bit of the screen. And to be honest, even with perfect adjustment, unless they're sitting perfectly on your face, you're gonna be losing tiny little bits of the screen, mainly at the top in the center and down in the corners left and right like this. Having said that, I've been able to basically completely eliminate it just by having correct positioning. Another thing about these glasses is that obviously you can see through them. I can see, get something to read. Not that you'd ever believe me. However, you don't really want to be able to see through when you're playing games, particularly in bright light like this. Like, I can see that light very clearly. So, they have another little trick up their sleeve, and hopefully, this will be visible on camera from here. Please be visible on camera from here. 3, 2, 1. Oh, there we go. It went off again, probably because it knows there's nothing plugged into them. Oh. There! Did you see that? There, it comes back on. It blocks out an incredible amount of light. I've been able to use these outside in the sun with no issue, and we've been having some flippin' bright sunlight recently. I don't do this, but I even use these and I look directly at the sun. Only for a moment, but I could see the sun. But have you ever seen the sun through like really, really dark sunglasses, and it just looks like a circle, like a small, weirdly small circle? That's what it looked like. Honestly, it's just like an electro filter. Really impressive. Electro filter. That's not a word. However, there is something that is a little bit of a disappointment, but I think it's just simply due to the fact that the screens on this thing, or the displays, are technically so flipping tiny. Now, I don't know what the subpixel arrangement is. If you don't know what subpixels are, you know how screens are made up of pixels individual. Well, each pixel is made up of usually 3 subpixels. Sometimes more, sometimes... I mean, if it's fewer, then that's mental. These are usually red, blue, and green, because using those, combining them in different brightnesses, you can make pretty much any color you like. The way that these pixels are arranged, they can be like these bars that go next to one another to create a square, or they can be any number of different, like, arrangements and different shapes. And I believe, I don't know, but I believe the arrangement in these glasses is triangular. So you got one at the top and 2 at the sides like that. And the reason I say that is because when you look at like hard edges, it looks a little bit funny. I'm gonna have to do another mock-up for you, but essentially what should look like a flat line when you've got the glasses on, look more like this. Like they look almost like sort of jaggedy, ever so slightly. It's a really weird effect, and it's something that, like, in motion, when you're looking at, like, rounded shapes, you'll almost never see. But on, like, hard lines, certainly vertical and horizontal, you can kind of see it, which is... it is a bit of a disappointment, but given the size of the displays and the limited research I've done, I think a triangular arrangement is literally the only thing they could do. I don't know that, but that's what we're dealing with here. And these are very small displays. So you know what? In motion, it's fine. Motion sickness is also a factor because these create supposedly a 152-inch virtual display in your field of view. Having said that, that's kind of meaningless, because you could have a 152-inch display and have it 200 meters away, and it'd be tiny. Conversely, my iPhone 13 mini's display, whoa, now it's massive! They do say on their website that it's a 52-degree field of view, which I have no idea whether that's correct. I don't know what my field of view is. I can see kind of out to here is where my hands are starting to disappear from my peripherals, and it fills up around about this much, I would say. Again, it's a really difficult thing to get across in video. But just like VR and stuff like that, because it's taking up so much of your field of view, your brain starts to think that that's all there is, and that what is happening on the screen is what's happening to you, you know? And that can cause some issues, because your brain sees you driving around in Mario Kart World, and your ear says, hang on, I'm not moving, something must be wrong, vomit time! I'm not really prone to motion sickness when it comes to this, and even VR I can kind of get by, and in these glasses I got it maybe a tiny bit, but I think if you are prone to motion sickness, if you're doing something where there's a lot of like movement like that, like Mario Kart for example, you may get a bit of that, so bear that in mind. Realistically though, that's just what happens when you feel your field of view like that. It's kind of hard to get around. Although having said that, if there was a way for the glasses to reduce the size, or at least the perceived size of the screen, that would surely reduce motion sickness, almost certainly. And more to the point, you would not quite struggle to get the full image in display. If you could just like, if there was an option to just like, I don't know, shrink down the display a bit or something like that, that could be really handy, ideally optically, and admittedly in the Switch 2 you can just go into the system settings and shrink the size of the screen down, but then you're losing, you know, visual fidelity. If you could do it optically, that would be amazing. I don't know if that's even remotely possible in real life, but if it was, it would be nice to have it as an option. Just saying. You've also got some speakers at the back here, and these arms are supposed to light up. I've never been able to get that to work, and I have no idea why. I've updated them to the latest firmware. They just don't light up. Meant to be like an option that you can control, and I can turn it on and turn it off, but they never actually light up. I mean, I'm not fussed, but you know, if it's a feature, I'd expect it to work. But the speakers are kind of back here, and they end up being around about here on your head, give or take. Depends on the size of your head, of course. Let me just double check. I wasn't wrong. And honestly, the speakers are pretty decent, you know, they're not going to be like super heavy bass or anything like that. They are, at the end of the day, in the arms of a pair of glasses, but you know, I've got pairs of headphones that don't sound quite this good. Where are they? I've got these Soundcore headphones that just sort of sit over your ear like that. And I would say that the speakers in the Vitures are slightly better, and I love these headphones. They're not great quality, but I do like the fact that they don't go in my ear. I hate that! Overall, I'm really, really impressed with these glasses. A massive upgrade over the ones that I tried prior, which I think were their first ones. But what about the mobile dock? Because that's what this is. You plug your Switch 2 into it, and you plug your glasses, I nearly said speakers, you plug your glasses into it, and you can see what's on the screen. Or rather, you can... you know what I mean. This is a power bank as well, so it doesn't need to be plugged into the wall or anything like that. They claim that this can provide up to 8 hours of play on the Switch 1, 4 hours of play on the Steam Deck, and my testing using Mario Kart World in the Switch 2, I think there's a reason they said up to, because I got about 2.5 hours roughly. That may not sound like a huge amount, and realistically it's not, but I really don't think you should be using these for any longer than like 2 or 3 hours, full stop. Their website says 3 to 4 hours, but because you're focusing on something that's so close, your eyes do get a little bit tired after a while. That's just to be expected. But, you know, 2.5 hours I think is absolutely fine. What is a downside, however, is that I've put it over here, I put it too far away. What is a downside, however, is that it charges and connects to the Switch 2 via the same port, which means that you cannot charge this when you're using it. Which feels like a major oversight. You know, just have a port on the back or something like that, and have that be the power in, and then you can use this indefinitely. But no, it has to be via battery power, which feels like a massive limitation. Seriously, there's already 3 USB-C ports on here? What's one more? And no, you can't use anything else in order to charge it. I've tried every variation that I could, and it just doesn't work. It either outputs or it inputs via that port. That's all it can do. And I know I said you wouldn't really be wanting to use it for any longer than that due to eye strain, but, you know, give people the option at the very least, as much as anything. If you're, you know, sort of, if you hadn't charged it in a while and then, oh, you want to play Switch 2 and, oh, it needs a bit of charging, and what can you do? You can't play and charge at the same time. You have to just play or charge. And I don't know, it just feels like a needless limitation to me. Just a quick side note, they did also send me this splitter, which has a port for the glasses and a port for power, and this actually works with the Switch OLED. Like, it just plugs in like, come on. There we go. It just works with the Switch OLED like that. That's no problem. It may take a moment to come in. God, these things are hard to record. There, you see, it's coming through. That's no problem. However, this doesn't work. This setup doesn't work with the Switch 2 for some reason. Here we are, same as before. Switch 2 power supply as well. You know, no mucking around. And then we plug this in. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do this one-handed, am I? It seems to think a camera's been connected. Nothing coming through on the glasses. I see no claims on their website that this works, but I thought it was just because it did work with the OLED. I just thought it was something worth pointing out. As far as I know, having the dock makes no difference. What's more, I was really impressed that the Switch 2 did not seem to get hot. Like, it felt warm on the back, but in the same way that it does just when you're playing it with it in a normal dock. It just seemed to, I even had it like resting on top, like this at the very least, not exactly like resting flat on its back, but even so, it seemed to get plenty of air. Didn't get too hot. I was genuinely really chuffed. I thought it was going to get toasty. But all that being said, all of the little foibles, all the little quirks, I've really enjoyed using these things, and I think that there is, admittedly, you know, sort of immediately you may think that there's not that much application, and all things considered, it's always going to be a slightly niche product. But I do think, I don't know whether it's just because recently, like, my peers and stuff like that, children, like young children, have become more of a thing in my life just because all my friends are having babies, and I've become more aware about what games are inappropriate to be playing on the TV or even, like, handheld when there's a young child in the room. This kind of eliminates that. You can kind of have your own little private thing. You can't see anything through this side. You know, they'd have to come up and actually see from the back, and okay, maybe turn the volume down if you're playing something like Cyberpunk and they're effing and blinding everywhere, but even so, that I think is a genuine application. Also, playing outside in the sunlight. It's absolutely viable. I really want to play my Switch 2 more outside. I've got a garden, I love it. But when it's sunny, when you want to be outside, the screen isn't quite good enough in order to make that work. But these absolutely make that a possibility, and that is not a bad thing. The 120 Hz as well. I mean, I've not been able to use it extensively. Obviously, there aren't that many 120 or even 40 Hz games available on the Switch 2. But when it comes to it, like Metroid Prime 4, yeah, I'm going to be using these. Imagine how immersive that's going to be. Oh, it's going to be grand. If anything, I'd say because your face is so much closer, because you're so much closer to the screen, it's actually easier to tell the difference between 60 and 120. By contrast, that also means that 30 frames a second seems even more egregious, so swings and roundabouts. But what about the price? Well, these aren't cheap. There's a lot of tech in here. It's all been shrunken down, so I understand why the price is the price. But even so, the glasses alone, these are the Pro models, they do a cheaper version. These are $500. And $500 is $500. The mobile dock isn't included in that either. That'll set you back another $130. So realistically, this is not a cheap setup. Having said that, what could you get TV-wise for $629? It's a lot of money for almost anything. It's not a lot of money for a house, admittedly, but these are a lot smaller than a house. But if you're looking at this and thinking, I could do with a pair of those and I could do with them for $500, you've got your answer. There'll be links in the description. But there you have it. That is the Viture Luma Pro XR glasses, or I'm calling them the Luma Pros. The Luma Pros! Are they perfect? Absolutely not. Very few things are in this world. Are they bloody good at what they set out to do? They flippin' are. just be prepared to pay for it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you strap that subscribe button to your face so that it fills 52 degrees of your field of view, and be sure to check out NintendoLife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye. In case anyone was curious what happens when you test USB camera, well, you'll see there is actually technically a camera in these things. You can just about see. I think this is for like motion tracking or something like that, which you can have with other platforms like Windows and Android and stuff like that. But it's not a Switch 2 thing. But now, well, you can game chat like this, baby.